Hi, this is Chris Slade, and you're watching Concerts That Made Us.
Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The show is about to begin.
Welcome to the podcast, Concerts That Made Us. Interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down. The greatest live shows and the cheering crowd sound. It's concerts, concerts that made us, concertsthatmadeus.com.
Chris Slade, it's an honor to have you on Concerts That Made Us.
Not at all. It's my pleasure.
Now, the Chris Slade Timeline recently released a new album, TimeScape. It's a mix of originals and some of your favourite covers. Take us a bit deeper into it if you can.
Yeah, well, there it is. That's the cover of it.
Cool.
That's a double CD. There's also downloads. Timeline I've always recorded for the past 10 years. And we've got the same members, by the way. But it's always been covers. And this time, I started to get some ideas for some songs. I've always written lyrics, especially the 70s with Manfred Mann's Earth Band. And I've always done lyrics anyway, just to try them out. Not that they ever got done, but just to try my writing. I was really pleased with what was coming through. And so we recorded some originals. And this Timescape is the result of that. And it's the first time I've ever been a lead singer. I've always done vocal backing. And I can sing in tune, which is a feat in itself, actually. But I say I never had a voice. When you work with people like Tom Jones and Paul Rodgers and David Gilmour, you don't think of being a singer yourself.
True.
With those guys up front all the time. I was really pleased at the way this turned out. And the record company wanted some ACDC in there. So we've been doing that, as I say, for 10 years, recording ACDC and Asia songs and all sorts of Uriah Heep, Manfred Mann's Earth Band. We always recorded that when we had time, because I thought it would come in handy, and it has, in the future. Yeah. So this is the first one. It's on Brave Words Records, where you can get downloads from, as opposed to a physical CD. Or you can get a double CD signed from chrisslade.com. And Chris Slade, the Chris Slade Timeline on Facebook. So I was really pleased with the way it turned out.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Are you kind of sorry you didn't move towards lead vocals maybe earlier in your career?
Yes, I regret a few things I didn't do earlier in my career. But yes, I could have developed it. But there was never any need. I was always playing as a drummer, so I never, and it's something I'm not as confident in as I am in my drumming. So, that's the answer to that, really. I just wanted to be a drummer.
Yeah, yeah. You originally formed the Chris Slade Timeline back in 2012 to mark 50 years as a professional rock drummer. How did you go about putting a band together? Because to match yourself, you would need some heavy hitter musicians.
Yeah, well, that's why I formed Timeline, actually, was because of these guys. I used to go and watch them work wherever they did, clubs and pubs. And if they were around my area, I would go and see them. Because they were doing covers, but they were doing things like Genesis and Kansas, both musically and vocally. And there's not many bands in Britain that can do that and do it really, really well. Some do, but very few. And, very few in my area. So I knew these guys were great musicians and they all sing. So they're all, the Kansas stuff was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I approached them and they were happy to do it because some people, I can't play that because I'm a heavy player, man. I can do the ACDC. Yeah, well, I want somebody who can do Uriah Heep as well. Oh, okay. And I've had bands before. I used to live in the States and but it's always been ACDC tribute band, not tribute band, but playing ACDC music because nobody ever wore shorts, which is what a tribute band I see as being a tribute band, is that they emulate ACDC in every way, even their
Yeah.
mistakes, which aren't too many, but
Yeah.
ACDC are a great band, and I was really proud to be in them twice, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that nobody else can say that.
Very true.
Um,
Very true. Speaking of ACDC, actually, you played on the Razor's Edge album. You were with them for a couple of years, and you also played on my favorite ACDC song, Big Gun. What do you think of them being back together now and touring at the age they're at now?
it's great. I really like Big Gun. We do it. It's on this TimeScape album, actually. It's a fantastic riff.
Yeah.
A crap movie, but a fantastic riff. um, sorry, Arnold, but not one of his best, I'm afraid.
No, no.
But the guys, Angus and Malcolm. They were still. Malcolm was still alive then, and we were on the plane, and they gave me a CD with it on, and I thought it was absolutely tremendous. Because we had to learn it to play it, so to speak. So we were flying to LA. So they gave it to you on the plane, and I thought it was absolutely amazing. That riff is like Peter Gunn, Peter Gunn?
Yeah.
It just rolls along and just don't stop.
That's for sure.
That's why we play it in Timeline, because it's such a great song, such a great riff.
I always think it's a pity that they don't actually play it live. I don't think they've ever actually played it live, or maybe they did once or twice, but it's definitely up there with, Back in Black and TNT and all the rest of them.
Yeah, I agree. The problem was it was on a compilation album for a movie, Last Action Hero, and it was a very successful, it sold millions, very successful music album. But not much attention was paid to it. We played it, as you say, I think once or twice in ACDC live. That was the first time around, I believe, but never since.
Yeah.
And that's why I love to play it in Timeline because, as I say, it's such a great riff and great song.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, if we jump back right to the start, you started out at the age of 16 playing with Tom Jones. How did you get the gig with Tom Jones?
We're from the same village in Wales.
Right.
We were born a few hundred yards apart, about 4 streets from each other. Phil Campbell was born in the middle, in the middle street. Phil Campbell of Motorhead. And, but of course, at least 10 years between each of us. So Tom's now 80 something, 83 or 4 or 5, somewhere around there. Same age as
Yeah.
my brother. They went to school together, or they went to the same school, should I say. And I worked in a shoe shop on a Saturday, and the assistant there, one of the women, was a fan of the band that was then Tommy Scott and the Senators.
Ah.
And this was before he was Tom Jones, because being a singer in Wales with a name like Tom Jones, it's like, I'm sorry. It's
Yeah.
like,
Which one?
who's the singer? Oh, Fred Smith. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which Fred Smith? Oh, that one, Tom Jones is a very common name.
Mm.
So he didn't use that name. And so I'd heard anyway that they'd sacked their drummer the night before. And lo and behold, the next day, after this assistant lady had told me that they'd sacked their drummer, the guitarist walked in to buy some shoes.
Ah.
So I was 16, he was 20 something. So I was very nervous walking up to him. There's a huge age gap, in those days. And well, it probably is now also. But I got the courage and I walked up and said, I hear you lost your drummer last night, and I'm a drummer and I live by Tom, which I did. I was about half a mile from Tom. Never met him. My father knew him because Tom used to go and sing in his concert party called the Pontypridd Bright Lights.
Right.
So, and they played the same places that we used to play with Tommy Scott and the Senators, which is in the valleys in Wales. And going up and down that, working men's clubs, coal miners and steel workers and their families. So you had to watch your language. And it was a great time. We were really successful, worked almost every night of the week. And that's how they came to my house to audition me, the band. It was eventually arranged because, of course, no mobile phones in those days.
Mm.
So it was the red phone box at the end of the street, and you had to be there at a certain time to accept a call.
Yeah.
We finally got it together, and the guys came to my house where I had my drum kit permanently set up, brand new Premier kit. And they came in, said, oh, well, hello. And do you know the start to Walk, Don't Run? Which I rattled off, which is the Ventures Walk, Don't Run instrumental. And I rattled that, just the intro off. And they said, okay, let's go to the pod and rehearse.
Nice.
So everybody picked up a drum and a drum each, and we walked to the bus stop, which was about 1,000 yards from my house. Got on a bus, went to Pontypridd, changed buses, with the drum kit and got on another bus to go to Abercurran to rehearse at the Thorn pub.
Yeah, yeah. You obviously eventually went on to Vegas and the bright lights of Vegas. What were those days like? Is it as glitzy and glamorous, as we like to think?
Yeah, it was actually. And Vegas was tiny compared to what it is today. Today it's a city. Then it was just a town
Yeah.
based around the Strip, what's known as the Strip, which is where all the bright lights are and the hotels. And it was literally this small. There was nothing between the Strip and the mountains which surround Vegas. I used to live there a few years back. And it's 1,000 times as big as it was in the 60s.
I could imagine.
I mean that 1,000 times.
Yeah, yeah.
Just massive. And yes, it was shiny, it was glittery, false, all those things. Plenty of gangsters walking around, real gangsters.
Mm.
And that was the same, though, all over the States.
Yeah.
So when I was with Tom for 7 years, right through the 60s. And, it was a good time. Met Elvis Presley. In fact, he offered me a job playing drums, honestly.
Oh,
I'm not
man.
making this up. And, we had a great time in the 60s.
Yeah, yeah. You're quite possibly the only person to ever turn Elvis Presley down then. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, sorry, Elvis, I'm too busy, man. Worst thing that ever happened to me professionally. In the end, cut a long story short, I think Tom's management went to Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager, and said, "You can't steal our drummer."
Man.
I think that's what happened. But I was going to go to rehearsals. I kept in touch with them all the time.
Mm.
I was going to go to rehearsals. I can't make rehearsals again because Tom's tour was getting extended, and I was contracted to Tom. And I should have just walked and said, "Sorry, man, this is Elvis Presley." By the way, we weren't going to be working when Elvis was working. It was supposed to be a month in Las Vegas, and that was it.
Right.
But I wish I'd done it. I should have just said to Tom, "Sorry, man, I'm off."
Yeah, exactly. It'd be interesting to think how your career would have went if you had have, because obviously you would have spent all those years with Elvis then in Vegas. But jumping ahead, it's an Irish podcast. I feel like I have to mention you played with Gary Moore as well. That's actually what led to ACDC. But back to Gary Moore, what was it like working with such a legendary character like him?
It's great. I was with him for a year, 88, 89, the year in that. I really enjoyed it. There's a good video on YouTube somewhere of a gig in Dublin.
Right.
And I think it's really good. So anybody who's interested in that should have a look because it's Gary Moore in Dublin live. And it was good. He was a great player. Great player. Of course, everybody knows that.
Was he aware of how good he was? Was there an ego with him, or was he just a really down-to-earth guy?
I'm sure he was aware of how good he was. Ego-wise, not so much. I used to meet him before I worked with him, I can't remember why I did. Maybe we both lived in North London or something. I can't remember now. But we used to go and have drinks with him and his wife and myself and my wife. And he was a very humble, very nice guy. And then I got a call a few years later saying, "Oh, Gary wants you tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. I think it was Elstree Studios. I can't remember now." And Cozy Powell had pulled out 4 days before the tour. So I had to learn the whole set in 4 days. And that's not just learning the songs, that's getting every little inflection. Gary was very insistent on it had to be exactly like the recording. And Cozy had the same brief, and I think that's why he left, because he didn't want to be stuck, playing the same drums every night.
Yeah.
So he wanted a bit more freedom than that.
You couldn't blame him.
Yeah. No. But Gary wanted it exactly like that. Even a little hi-hat chip, he wanted that in, there.
Yeah.
Very demanding. He became very demanding on that. And he was a very demanding person professionally. Very nice guy personally. Very demanding professionally.
Yeah. Yeah, I get you. I suppose at that level, though, you kind of have to be. But then, exactly like the record is a bit unreasonable, I think, when when you say about the hi-hat and it has to be there, and everyone likes it to be a bit different from the record when you're playing live.
Yeah, well, you have to make it your own. That's the trick. You've got to make it spontaneous, even if you played it 2,000 times before. The same as ACDC, you would play Back in Black. How many times have they played Back in Black? And it's got to be spontaneous. It's a trick. It's a professional trick. You learn how to do it. It's like you talking. You might have said the same thing a dozen times, but you've got to make it spontaneous.
Yeah.
And you've got to make it believable. If it's not, people just don't listen.
Yeah.
To anything, to either music or talk.
Very true.
So
Very true.
It's every professional musician knows this. It's got to be spontaneous. When you play the same thing, it's got to come from your soul. It's got to come from your heart. It's got to come from your being. So it's got to be a spontaneous thing.
Very true. Very true. Now, the podcast is called Concerts That Made Us, so I have to ask you some concert-related questions, if you don't mind.
Of course.
First off, as a concert goer, what concerts would you say have made you?
Concert goer. I'm not a concert goer.
I was thinking you might say that. You probably didn't have time for much concert going.
No, I went with my son once to, my youngest son, to Download. And I think Slipknot were on, something like that. He wanted to see Slipknot. And so I went there and in the crowd, and I bought tickets, by the way. They weren't freebies. And he wanted to see that. So I think that's one of the very few times I went to a concert, except to work.
Yeah.
I've been to many to work. I've been doing it now for 60 years.
Yeah. It's a long time.
So, it is. Tell me about it. So I'm not much of a concert goer. I listen backstage to what's going on because you can't avoid it. And I don't like it much. Don't like being ankle deep in mud and all the rest of it that goes with it.
Yeah.
So, I
I wouldn't
don't
blame
know
you.
about concerts much.
Well, the Chris Slade Timeline then, for any listeners that haven't caught one of your shows, what is it like live? Give us the full experience if you can.
Oh, well, I'm very proud to be with this band because they're such great musicians, tremendous musicians. Um, James Cornford, the guitarist, Mike Clark, the keyboard player and guitarist, have played together since they were 11 years old. And they're 35 now. So they're a pretty tight unit. And Stevie G is the singer and also the bass player. He has what can I say? A smoother voice. Sorry, Bun. Than Bun Davis, who does the ACDC songs. Also on Sundance on the original CD, our original CD, and Back with a Vengeance on the original CD. So that's the band. We've been together for 12 years. Same people. We drive to gigs. We don't fly, very rarely fly. We flew to Sicily, I think, and Portugal once or twice. But usually we drive, even if it's to Prague, which takes about 2 days to get there at least.
Yeah.
But we drive, all of us. And it's tremendous. The idea is to entertain the people. We do half ACDC, about an hour. We do 2 hours, about an hour of ACDC, not all in one lump. We split it up to try to make it entertaining. So we intersperse it with Gilmour and Page and Uriah Heep and Manfred Mann's Earth Band, along with ACDC. But people want to hear ACDC, and we give it to them. As I say, we're not a tribute band. We play ACDC music. People only complain when at the end of at least 2 hours, I say, "This is the last song, folks." Then it's like, so it's a 2-hour show. It's like the history of rock, really.
I like it. I like it. If you think of all the concerts, I know there's thousands that you've played over your career. Is there one that maybe sticks with you as the best? It just couldn't have got any better.
There's been quite a few, actually. But I suppose you've got to say something like Live at Donington. That was a great, it was filmed fantastically well and the sound balance was fantastic. It's a great concert. And so I think we had some great concerts with Manfred Mann's Earth Band. We were a good live band. We could never capture it on record. But on stage, it was fantastic. It was like, it was more like Cream than anything else, than anything we've ever recorded. Mick Rogers he's still with Earth Band, is a great guitarist. And we used to go off on musical tangents and, like a jazz type thing, really. A bit like Cream. Off and then come back to a solo and then come back to a theme. It was a great experience. And I could use all my technique. I started off playing jazz in the beginning when I was about 11, 12, certainly listening to jazz, 11 or 12 years old. And so I always had that jazz technique that I could use when needed. So with those band, I used straight rock and jazz. So it was that was a great band and a great experience.
Yeah.
Again, we used to tear the house down, really, a lot of times. And people are surprised by that because they wouldn't expect that. It's the same with Timeline, actually. They don't know, unless they've seen us before, they don't know what to expect or how good the band is. It's always nice to hear when people say, I haven't heard of you guys before. This is the best band I've ever seen. And they mean that,
Yeah. That's the best way to have it, though. I'll have them going in kind of blind, not knowing what to expect, and then you can absolutely shock and awe them.
Yeah, absolutely. James Cornford is a fantastic soloist. He gets standing ovations at the end of solos. Because people are like, I've never heard of this guy. Who's this guy? And that's, of course, why I picked him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he is so good. And they all are of that standard. They are music teachers in their day job, if you like. As I say, they're only 35. To me, that's spring chicken,
True. When it comes to showtime these days, how do you kind of psych yourself up? And then afterwards, how do you wind down?
Wind down with beer, actually. I never drink before a show. I haven't forever, since at least the 60s. It's funny. I was my first gig, and the Rock on Bust was in the States, and I've forgotten his name. Drummer from Metallica,
Lars Ulrich
was there, and I knew him quite well. And he suddenly jumped in front of me and went, "Surprise!" All right. Hi, lad. And he said, "You've been standing here for like 20 minutes with a cup of tea in your hand, and you haven't moved." And I do. When I stand there, I don't even move my feet. And he said, "You're on in about 40 minutes. What do you do to get yourself psyched up?" I said, "We just walk on stage."
Right.
And he said, do you sort of limber up? And, I said, no, not even Angus does that. And he just walks on stage and plays. And so do I, and so does everybody else. Brian might do whoop, whoop before he goes on, but that's about it.
Yeah.
So he was shocked by that. He said, we've got people, we've got psychiatrists, we've got psychologists, we got people. For about 2 hours before show, we talked to all these people to motivate us and get us to get on stage. And we play for half an hour before we go on. I said, Jesus, I'd be knackered at the end of that.
Yeah, exactly. You want to go to bed, never mind going on stage.
Yeah. So Metallica, okay, if Metallica want to do that, that's what they do. But ACDC, none of that, I'm afraid. Maybe we should. Who knows? You'll have people going, "Oh, yeah, you can tell, can't you? Yeah. But no. So winding up, I just have to walk on stage and I'm already wound up and ready to
Nice.
play. As soon as I sit on a kit, actually, any kit, anywhere, anytime, I'm ready to play.
Ah,
So, I used to practice all through my teenage years. But after that, I was always working. So to me, I didn't need to practice. I never have, except for the early days, have a drum kit at home.
ah,
And that was the early 60s.
yeah.
So, I've never since then, even when I lived in the middle of the country, I've never played at home.
Ah,
I think it's just a thing that, having people here, even though I lived in the middle of the country at a house surrounded by countryside,
hmm.
even then I didn't.
Yeah. Is it a
So,
kind of thing of that's your work and you want to keep it separate from your personal life?
sort of, in a way, yes. But I found and I find rehearsals and anything like that to be really boring, I'm afraid. Practices, I find it boring. And that's the reason I don't like to do it. I might play on my knees now and again when I'm sitting. But apart from that, hardly any. And people go, yeah, I can tell. But I don't have complaints very much from anybody except the trolls who say, oh, yeah, he's crap and he's not the real drummer for ACDC,
Oh
And
man.
Brian has been in ACDC, 50 years? He's still the new singer
Yeah. Yeah.
to a lot of people.
Yeah.
50 years he's been doing it, I think, 40 or 50 anyway.
Yeah.
And
Crazy.
those trolls are just, you can have preference of somebody. You can say, oh, I think Bon was great. Yes, he was. You can say, I think Phil Rudd plays better than Slade. That's your opinion.
Yeah.
It's a subjective opinion. It's your opinion. You might have 1,000 people or 10,000 people who agree with you. It doesn't mean you are right. It's an
Exactly.
opinion about anything.
Yeah.
You can have an opinion that yellow is better than black, but it's an opinion. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. It's not a
So
fact.
these trolls are like, they think that their thought is it. If
Mm.
they think that, and other people think it too, so it must be true.
Yeah.
Of course, Phil Rudd should be up there playing drums. He's not there now. I understand personal circumstances, yes, but quite often it's been his own making. So he should be there. It's like he's the original. It's like Ringo Starr and the Beatles. You can't mess with that. But
True.
what they're going to do, stop, not work? ACDC because Phil isn't available? No, they're not. So, it's people don't get that. And they say, oh, yeah, you're not as good as Phil Rudd. And it's like, well, that's your opinion, mate.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
Exactly.
do you think that Angus and Malcolm would use somebody, me, for instance, or Simon Wright or anybody, if they couldn't play? They say, well, he can't play drums. I've been doing it for 60 years. I think I know how to play drums.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And who of these guys, these trolls, what bands have they been in? Who have they worked with or for?
Yeah.
It's all very well saying, he can't play. do you think I'd be a professional drummer for 60 years if I couldn't play, if I didn't know how
Exactly.
to play? So,
Exactly.
I mean, I wish they'd shut up, honestly, but
Mm.
they won't, of course.
The
This might
majority
start.
of them, the majority
This,
of them are just guys sitting behind a keyboard anyway that have never been near a musical instrument, let alone a drum kit. You know?
exactly. You know, they're the greatest guitarists in their own front room.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. Very true. And before we dive into the last couple of questions, then future plans. I know you have a couple of gigs coming up. What can you tell us?
We always like to work, timeline. And that's all I do now. I've been offered other things, but, I don't like to work without the band. And that's all I want to do. We got a couple of gigs. They're not many, but next year there's going to be more. But I go back to Pontypridd in October, actually.
Oh,
I haven't been there for a while. My brother still lives there, my older brother, Danny,
ah.
and he still lives there. I'm looking forward to doing that.
And we'll dive into the last couple of questions then. There are a couple of fun random ones. First off, besides music and the band, what are you currently obsessed with?
Well, I am obsessed with two of the tracks on the album, actually,
Okay.
on TimeScape, which is Time Flies and the End of Eternity.
I like it.
I played it yesterday for the first time for a couple of months, and I'm so impressed with everything on it that, my singing for a start, I'm astounded at that. It just started with an idea for some echo, some repeat echo, some repeat echo, some repeat. Oh, sorry. And so impressed with James Cornford's playing. Actually, last night I was watching a concert in Prague, and one of the greatest guitarists I worked with was on it, which is Guthrie Govan.
Ah.
And that was impressive. I was with him for 5 to 7 years with Asia, in the band Asia. And he gave lessons to James Cornford in the beginning, before I knew James. I'm pretty sure of that. And two of the greatest guitarists I've ever seen, which is Guthrie and James Cornford. So you've got to be a really good guitarist to even know his name, actually, because he has no ego. He looks like Jesus, Guthrie, long hair and a beard, and he has no ego whatsoever. And I'm proud to say I've played with him, along with many people like Pino Palladino, Tony Franklin, lots of other people like that. Actually, I'm leaving a lot out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I just wanted, when talking about timeline dates, I was hoping that we would get more dates next year, and I'm sure we will, and people are working on it. We're even talking about Canada now, and Mexico, South America, places like that. So hopefully I can survive to do them.
Any chance of getting you over to Ireland for some gigs?
We've played Ireland, and I would love to. It was an enjoyable experience. What promoters don't realize is that the ferry is a long, long time, much longer than going to Europe from England. and it costs a lot. But they want you to play for like 500 quid, And
Yeah, it's not worth it.
An English band, we're based in England, in Kent. You can't do it for that. It's absolutely impossible.
Yeah.
So, any promoters out there, dig deep, guys.
Exactly. And the final question. So, out of everyone you've played with and every period in your career, what is the happiest? What one would you like to relive?
There's a few, actually. All of it.
Good one.
Please, starting tomorrow. No, I've had a great time. Obviously there's been, a few mishaps or misadventures along the way, but not that many. So I'm pleased the way it's gone. Happy times being 60s with Tom Jones. Oh, there's many of them, actually. Gilmour tour was really great, really enjoyable. That was 84. Earth Band was fantastic, 70s. But in all, I've just enjoyed the whole thing, the whole experience. Some negatives, of course, it comes into everybody's career and life, of course. But I'm just happy to still be here, and I'm able to play drums at my age. I can't talk too good, but I can still play drums.
Exactly. That's what counts. That's what counts.
Yep.
Listen, Chris, this has been an absolute pleasure now. Thanks a million.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure. It really has. And I mean that. It's great to be able to spread the words even at my age.
Welcome to the podcast, concerts that made us, interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down. The greatest live shows and the cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concerts that made us.com.